Poppy Playtime Chapter 6 is coming, and Mob Entertainment still hasn't told us what happened to the executives of Playtime Co., the minds behind the Bigger Bodies initiative, Leith Pierre, Harley Sawyer, Elliot Ludwig, Eddie Ritterman. After the Hour of Joy, who survived and who got turned into an experiment? This is the Poppy Playtime lore nobody explains, so let's get into it.
Stella Greyber. She was the head of Playcare. She was in charge of recruiting the children and even selecting them to be turned into experiments. In her mind, she believed she was doing something good, that she was giving those special children a better life. But right after the Hour of Joy, Stella completely vanished. So what actually happened to her? As of now, there is no official information in the lore about what happened to her, but the most likely outcome is that she died. If we follow what happened to Gracie Green, then the orphans gave her a special death for being the one who basically handed them over to be transformed.
Some people say she was tortured until she could not take it anymore, while others say the prototype turned her into an experiment, since at that point in the timeline, the prototype was focused on experimenting. Some also say there is a small chance she is still alive because she knew these children so well. She already understood what they were going to do, or that something like this was coming. So by being prepared, she already knew an escape route. And on top of that, as we saw in Chapter 2, she had a dedicated slide system for fast transport. Eddie Ritterman. He was the head of innovation, although in one of the Chapter 4 VHS tapes, he describes himself as a businessman.
I'm a businessman, Mr. Silver. I get paid to see that things get done.
And honestly, he is one of the darkest characters in all of Poppy Playtime. He was in charge of keeping everything running, but also of hiding all the illegal activity. He supervised the biggest projects, like the Bigger Bodies initiative, and even helped build facilities like Game Station. Without him, Playtime Co. would have never been able to keep everything a secret. So what happened to him? If we take into account that he covered up the company's crimes, had no empathy for anyone, and even eliminated witnesses, and even suggested getting rid of Harley Sawyer when he became a problem, then everything points to him still being alive. We have been seeing traces of him since Chapter 2 with his personalized slide system and through multiple VHS tapes, but nowhere do we actually get told what happened to him. Almost nobody ever saw him inside the company, so for the experiments to even know where to find him would have been extremely difficult. On top of that, he helped build multiple facilities, so he knew the factory like the back of his hand. There are even theories that Player is Eddie, and since almost no one ever saw him, the experiments do not recognize him as someone bad. If we consider how much of a villain he really was, he is not Player. Even so, there is still a chance he died during the Hour of Joy while trying to escape. Jimmy Roth, the head of marketing at Playtime Company. We get a brief appearance of him in a VHS interview in Chapter 2. He was the one behind the character names, the company colors, and even how the ads and toy packaging looked. The truth is, we do not know if he was aware of the Bigger Bodies project, but based on how he comes across, many believe he lived in his own world, believing he was the best at marketing, and that was it. So when it comes to the deeper side of Playtime Co., he never knew what was really going on. Most people agree that Jimmy simply died during the Hour of Joy, although others say he was turned into an experiment, one that was named Jimmy. This is because in the newspaper that appears in Chapter 5, at the very bottom we can see an ad that says there is a 2-for-1 deal on popsicles at Jimmy's store. Dr. Harley Sawyer, the head of special projects, and the one we definitely have the most information about on this list. He arrived at Playtime Co. to bring in the Bigger Bodies initiative, so the company would not go bankrupt. He supervised and helped many subjects be transformed into experiments, but when he started to become a problem, he was turned into his own experiment. This consisted of a machine that only contained his brain, being kept alive by complex systems. This was because they needed his knowledge and his brain to continue creating more experiments, but this way he would no longer be a problem. Over time, he started to integrate himself deeper into the system, and he gained access to Playtime Co.'s security systems and was even able to take physical forms. In Chapter 4, everyone thought Player had defeated him after overloading his system, but in Chapter 5, when the master backup system was activated, we saw that he came back to life. So yes, he is the only one on this entire list who is still alive, but we still do not know what is going to happen to him. Elliot Ludwig, the CEO and founder of Playtime Company. He started with the idea of creating and selling toys to the world. It is believed that the death of his daughter, or a possible terminal illness she had, is what pushed Elliot to search for a way to save her. If we remember his story, he divorced his wife, so his daughter was all he had left. He started with these experiments to try to achieve immortality. First with animals, and then he moved on to humans, especially children. That is where Ollie came from, who would later be known as the prototype. Ollie was always upset that Elliot talked more about his daughter, and he felt rejected. So, a few days later, Ollie sought revenge and ended Elliot's life in his own office. Elliot is 100% confirmed to be dead in the canon, but if you want us to dive deeper into the theory that Elliot is actually the prototype, leave Elliot is the prototype in the comments. Leith Pierre, the head of innovation and the most important figure after the death of Elliot Ludwig. He had the most control over the factory and the highest level of authority. He knew everything from top to bottom about what was happening inside Playtime Company, and because he was the most important, many people believe he is still alive. It is possible that he was not inside the factory during the Hour of Joy, but even if he was, it is very likely he had an escape route. We know this because in the VHS where Preston Willard appears, they talk about an executive elevator for fast transport and a secure exit. Also, after everything happened, remember that investigators were sent in to recover information or even important parts, and honestly, tell me, who would send people into that place knowing what was inside? Leith could have been the only one insane enough to order that, just to continue the experiments. In fact, in the video about Chapter 6 leaks, we analyzed an interview with a Mob Entertainment executive, where he said that the factory is only a small part of what exists in the world and universe of Poppy Playtime. That means there is a real possibility that Leith escaped and continued experimenting outside the factory. Other people believe he is hiding deep inside the factory, maybe in the farms we saw in the caves in Chapter 5. At the end, we can see a large structure or building, almost like a mansion, and many believe that is where Leith Pierre is living, and that we will face him along with the prototype when Poppy Playtime reaches its end. So in conclusion, it is very possible that Leith is still alive and will be the final villain. Stuart seems like one of the most harmless characters in the entire factory, since he was just the head of shipping, the person in charge of supervising everything that came in and out of Playtime Co. Stuart helped move all the company's machinery without raising suspicion and even altered records and information when necessary. We do not know much about what happened to him, we only know that he was about to retire, and in fact, he personally chose another employee named Rich as his replacement before stepping down. That means Stuart knew exactly what kind of person Playtime Co. needed to keep operating after him. But what is interesting is that he never appears dead, and he is never shown as an experiment. He is not even mentioned during the Hour of Joy, so the most likely outcome is that if he managed to retire before everything happened, he survived. Richard Lovitz. In the story, we are told how he started as a simple warehouse employee. He was a very explosive person, he had a very aggressive personality, and because of that, almost nobody talked to him. In fact, people hated him. He constantly criticized how the company operated, and people got so tired of him that he was sent as punishment to work on the Toy Island. The Toy Island was a horrible and exhausting place to work. Despite his behavior, he was promoted to head of shipping by Stuart, because Stuart trusted him.
They've been pushing hard for me to choose my replacement. I'm actually thinking about giving the role to you.
Really?
Yeah, really. Nothing official yet, but I think there's a decent guy beneath all that gruff.
At first, Richard did not know anything about the horrible things the factory was doing, but as he started to learn more, Leith Pierre and Ritterman considered promoting him to a higher position, so the average employee would see him and feel inspired. The most interesting part is that, despite being such a disliked person who was always complaining, he most likely survived the Hour of Joy, since it is theorized that he took a day off that day. Because of this, many people have started to believe that Richard Lovitz could actually be Player, since he is mentioned in almost every chapter of Poppy Playtime. On top of that, he never had contact with Dr. Sawyer, and that could explain why he does not recognize him. And this brings us to Rowan Stoll. Rowan Stoll was the head of information technology at Playtime Co. He was literally the man in charge of monitoring the company's systems, cameras, files, and databases. He did not seem special compared to other characters, but for him, that was his mistake. He discovered something he was never supposed to know. He discovered that Huggy Wuggy was more than just a statue in the center of the lobby, because he saw Huggy Wuggy's eyes move. At first, Rowan tried to convince himself it was just a technical error. He even sent recordings to Leith Pierre, trying to warn him.
Hello, Mr. Pierre. Look, I know you don't want to hear any more about this. I get it. Sounds like a bad joke, Huggy Wuggy staring at children. But look, I'm filming this so I can hopefully prove what I saw. Look, if some creep is hiding nanny cams in our mascot's eyeballs, then it's something that needs to be taken seriously.
That is why we know his death was not an accident. Playtime Co. eliminated him, and to leave no trace, he was devoured by Boxy Boo. We can actually see the moment of his death in a VHS. Maria Ashokan. This name might not sound familiar, but she was the principal of the school inside Playcare. She was in charge of managing all the students, just like a principal would in a normal school. Because of this, we know she saw the orphans every single day, and she obviously knew what was going to happen to them. Almost nothing is known about this woman. We do not even have an official document like we do with Gracie Green. This leads to two possibilities. Either she died during the hour of joy, or Playtime Company eliminated her before everything collapsed, just like Rowan, since she knew important things. Another theory is that Maria was removed before the factory collapse. And the final possibility is that Maria never left Playcare and was captured by the prototype, receiving a punishment similar to Miss Gracie. But what do you think? Do you think she will be an experiment we will see in Chapter 6? Preston Willard! In life, he was not the main villain, and he was not the one giving the final orders. But for obvious reasons, he was not innocent either. He was part of the staff and part of all these horrors. The difference is that at times he showed empathy. He spoke to the experiments as if they were the poor orphans, and he felt pity for them. He was not the typical bastard who treated them like merchandise. In fact, if we remember part of his story, he was very confused when he first joined Playtime Co., and as he started to understand the factory's true intentions, he did everything in his power to try to reveal the truth. He even avoided greeting the orphans because he already knew what was waiting for them, and that probably sealed his fate. Even knowing everything, he never had the courage to stop the abuse. But the truth is, he did not have the guts to expose it, and he waited until the very last moment. So how does the prototype treat him? It does not massacre him or destroy him right away. In fact, it almost seems like the prototype took a liking to him, enough to give him one of the worst punishments possible, experimenting on him and turning him into a collection of experiment pieces. So his end is not a quick death. The prototype made sure to transform him and force him to go through all the cruelty he was part of, even though he had every chance to bring Playtime Co. down. He was forced to experience, in his own flesh, the horrors of Playtime Co. His greatest punishment was not death. It was never being able to escape what he allowed to happen. Anyway guys, these were all the fates of the higher-ups in Poppy Playtime. Some of them died, some of them disappeared, and some of them might still be out there, hiding. But the truth is, we still don't know everything. So tell me, did we miss anyone? And what do you think really happened to them? Let me know what other videos you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next one.